Standard & Poor's, or known now as S&P Global, and talk a little about a recent development in that. And I will have the full review of the rating available for anybody who would like to take it with them. So to give a little history, the history of the county's bond rating has been, in at least my experience, between the time I started here up until 2014, the county had a rating of an A-. Back in March of 2014, Standard & Poor's dropped the county's rating to a BBB-, which was a bit concerning at the time. We had, at that point, had 10 years of not contributing to the annual required contribution for the pension. We had a number of years of budget deficits. We had subsidies going to the county nursing home. All of those things they cited in that downgrade of the bond rating. Since then, there have been a number of measures taken. So 2 years later, in 2016, it was increased to BBB+. Again, in June of 2017, it was upgraded to an A+, which was then back above where we were in 2014. And I'm very pleased to report that after a recent review in January, Standard & Poor's has upgraded the county to an A+ stable. From what I understand from Jay Wenger, our financial advisor, that is a very good rating for a county of our size. Above that, you can only go to a AA or a AAA. He said it is unheard of for a fairly rural county to be in those AA and AAA categories. So the county of our size with an A+ is a very good place to be. I think the result of this, the timing of this is excellent. As you know, there are plans to do a new county 911 center, which is going to require a significant amount of borrowing. With an A+ stable rating, we can certainly expect to have much more desirable rates. We would have had desirable rates with an A positive outlook, but an A+ stable will be very appealing to investors who want to buy the county's bonds that are issued. So just go through a couple of the comments from S&P Global that they made, citing their reasons for the upgrade. They note the county's strengthened financial position demonstrated by 3 years of audited surpluses and maintenance of very strong reserves. In their view, the county's recent track record of structural balance, good reserve position, and low debt and pension are all supportive of a higher rating. Their opinion reflects adequate management with standard financial policies and practices under their financial management assessment methodology. I will mention that in the past, all of the, at least the past two, I should say, of the ratings cited weak management, and that's not reflecting on any individuals. It's just looking at the overall management of the county in terms of financial policies, fiscal policies, and so on. They have dropped that weak and now refer to it as adequate management. So that's also a real good thing. Very strong budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity, very strong debt and contingent liability position with debt service carrying charges of 3.3% of expenditures, and net direct debt that is only 13% of total governmental fund revenue, as well as rapid amortization with almost 90% of the debt to be retired in the next 10 years. I mentioned the adequate management being up from weak. They do note in here that the county is considering issuing debt for a new 911 dispatch center, but given the county's low debt burden, we believe it can absorb this additional debt without deterioration in credit quality, so that's a good place to be. The stable outlook, when they give a grade, they also either add, as I said, positive, this time it's stable. The stable outlook reflects our view of the county's strong budgetary flexibility, which we believe will allow the county to maintain structural balance in spite of potential budget pressures. We do not anticipate changing the ratings in the 2-year outlook horizon. So it seems we'll enjoy this at least for 2 years unless something really drastically changes. So that's what I have in terms of comments. I want to thank Controller Metley and and Jay Wenger from Susquehanna Advisors. The three of us were on the call with Standard & Poor's back in January. It's kind of a nerve-wracking thing leading up to it. It almost feels like a final exam over the telephone. You know, they give you a lot of questions. They give you questions ahead of time, but some of those questions lead down a rabbit hole, and you certainly hope you can, you know, have the answers they're looking for. So that's what I have.
Awesome. Comments?
Well, I'd like to say thank you, Jamie, for all your hard work on this and your support. I think that it's very important that we have trust in your abilities to negotiate this with Standard & Poor's. But I'd also, it's wonderful to point out all the positives, but on the areas of what we're lacking and what we can do better, they also point out that the county lacks a formal capital improvement plan, formal debt policies, and multi-year financial forecasts for investments. So this is one of the things I feel very strongly we need to pursue, and then I think we will have a look forward as well as a look back. It says how we do adequately look back 3 years, but we're not looking forward, and that's important in any management of a business or a government.
Well, I'm first of all proud of this accomplishment, and Jamie gave some history of our bond rating, and obviously we've come a long way. And in order to make this happen, there had to have been some difficult decisions made by this board. And I'm proud to have played a role in making those decisions. And several things that I feel I relate to my life. And that is, if you make the difficult decisions and what apparently are the right decisions, good things will happen. And this is certainly an example of that. In addition to that, recognition by people, by the electorate, the residents of the county, becomes apparent in situations like this. And I go back to a little over a year ago when my own party spent $125,000 to defeat me in a primary election, and the residents, the voters, the Republican voters of Lebanon County decided to re-elect me. So I think that points to the fact that we as a Board of Commissioners made the right decisions over the past 8 years, really. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to comment on something as great as, you know, a AA rating or an A rating plus. So
I'd only like to add that I'm happy that we're here, especially with the timing of some things that we're going to be looking at doing. But public safety is our main tenet as far as our work as commissioners, but a close second, because if you don't have the financial strength to do what needs to be done in public safety, it makes life a lot more difficult. So I think the timeliness is good, and I appreciate that being recognized for the heavy lift that we were able to accomplish.
I do have one more comment. The other sentence that kind of jumped out at me that I don't necessarily agree with is we anticipate the county will implement budget adjustments for 2021, such as expenditure reductions, it says, or tax increases to address the projected deficit. And I'm not on board with raising taxes at this point. I mean, I don't see a need for that. And so I just wanted to point out that that's in here as well.
Well, what they're pointing out is that they're not suggesting you need to do that necessarily. They're saying that if, in order to tackle the budgetary deficit, which we did have this year, we had to supplement the revenue in order to balance the budget, and they recognize that for 2020, and that won't go away for 2021. It'll only get worse. So you either need to, one of the two is what they're saying. They're not suggesting either one or mandating anything. They can't, obviously. They're just recognizing that one of the two would have to be done. It's either reduce expenditures or increase revenue. That's all they're saying
It
in
also
there.
says that we are extremely fiscally conservative with our budgets because we don't back out when there are empty vacancies and
That's
things
true.
of that
Mhm.
nature.
Yep. Which would be, if that's decided to do, that would be a reduction in expenditures, which is one of the things they're mentioning.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes?
Sir, I'd like to ask you a question about that. What prompts an evaluation of the rating? You didn't, a couple of the months you attributed to didn't seem to be limited to any portion of a fiscal or a calendar year. Is it upon request? Is it whenever they get around to it? It seemed to vary the month.
Both, and one more reason. So they have their own schedule where, I think it's typically every 2 years, the file comes around and they have to take a look and just update it. Whether they make a change or not is up to them, but so they initiated this one. They got in touch with us and said, it's time for a review. Other instances are where an entity is going out on a bond issue, taking on additional debt. Prior to that, they'll want to do a rating review to make sure that the rating they have is what's accurate at that moment. So right before a municipality or a county or a state goes out on a bond issue or borrowing.
So let's say
It's almost like a review for a mortgage, before you would take the mortgage.
Okay, so you pretty much answered my question. So let's say that the county does decide to borrow for a 911 center, would there be another evaluation?
They'll probably it'll be very brief and cursory. They'll having just done it,
Right.
in January and February, it'll be a formality, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
So with that,
Steve?
come on in.